Good evening. I am emotional because I didn't know I would be speaking before Mr. Ricks, and so I express my condolences because my experience with the criminal legal system is professional, of course, but extremely personal as well. And so I'm Marva Brown. I'm a judge currently in Manhattan Criminal Court. And on the flyer, they put Kings County Civil Court because that's how I was elected. And I think it's important to note that being elected to the civil court has given me a 10-year term where some people believe I now have the autonomy to be my authentic self on the bench and make decisions without fear of reprisals that might be contrary to what mainstream media, people that don't see value in my people, in our community, agree with. And so when I was invited here to speak tonight, I honestly thought, what could I add to this conversation? Because as a Black woman in America, I must say I've lived a life of privilege. And that is because I was born to a teenage mother, a father who told her to get an abortion. And because of that, I spent most of my life under the care of my grandparents, who were hardworking, economically stable people who surprisingly were corrections officers. And they were people who, with 8th grade educations, were able to use employment in corrections, first New York City Corrections, and then my grandfather was a CO at Sing Sing Prison, and that's how my family was able to move from the Bronx River Projects to Westchester County. And then once my grandmother was in Westchester, she became a CO at Westchester County Jail. And my story is one where how did the child, the progeny of corrections officers, become a public defender, a fighter for the people, a fighter for liberation and second chances? And when I think of having the opportunity to speak here tonight, I thank Henry Robinson from the Cattell Center. We did Close Riker's work when I was still an attorney at the Legal Aid Society. I thank Garrett Smith from Communities Not Cages, CCA, for inviting me here. But I think of Women's History Month and the influence that my grandmother had on me, because in all of the years that she worked corrections, I heard stories of incarcerated people, incarcerated women, and how she mentored them, cared for them, taught them to care for their babies while they were incarcerated, taught them how to garden and grow food outside of the jail. And my grandmother, having an 8th grade education, made sure that I had an education. And what she inspired in me and what she poured into me as a child was, maybe you can help these people before they get to us in the jails. And so my life growing up was filled with stories of incarcerated people and their struggles. But my grandmother, in doing her work, in mentoring these women, caring for them, she believed in care, custody, and control, those standard operating procedures of what ideally the criminal legal system should be. And she definitely made sure that things were done right on her watch. And in turn, my uncles, they became COs, 2 of them. But it became very personal to us as a family when one of my uncles got addicted to crack cocaine in the 80s and became an inmate at the same jail my grandmother was. I think at that time she was a captain at the jail, and then he went upstate. He did 2 upstate sentences. And so the personal effect of having an incarcerated family member is very strong with me and the work that I do each and every day, because I know that there are so many reasons why people end up involved in the criminal legal system. And so my work as a public defender, I love litigation. I love a good trial. I love cross-examining a witness. However, the truth of the matter is most of the cases that we have, they don't end up in trials. And so for me, getting to know my clients, getting to know their stories and why they ended up in court, why they ended up with cases, what their family and home life and community life became a priority to me, because I needed to get on the record what their needs were. I needed to get on the record what our vision for their future could be once they leave the criminal legal system. And my journey to the bench was one that, I had appeared in front of countless judges, and there was one in Brooklyn. They called him the Admiral, or he called himself the Admiral, I guess. And we did a trial. My client, I was saying, take this plea, please. He's gonna sentence you harshly. And we think about, people exercising their right to go to trial, and the fear of the trial penalty is a real thing. But for this client, he just said, this is too much time. I'm not gonna take it. I'm not gonna take it. And so we did the trial, and he was convicted of a burglary in the 2nd degree in a case where no one was home, no one was injured, but he had 2 prior felony convictions on his record, and this judge gave him 15 to life. And I think my client at the time was about 28 years old, 15 to life. And we appealed the sentence. Higher court said that judge abused his discretion. And we came back for resentence in front of another judge. And as we were preparing the pre-sentence paperwork on resentence, we asked our client to, let us know what he had been doing while incarcerated upstate and all that. And a big problem came out when he wasn't offered any programming because he had life on the tail end. And we could say to the judge, he doesn't have any infractions, he has a job in the mess hall, but really in terms of programming, education, vocational, he did not have, I would say, opportunity and possibly wherewithal to really fight to get those services and engage in those services. But even still, we had presented information to the second judge for resentence that he had learning disabilities his entire life, mental health disabilities. We had DOE records from years prior that the schools were trying to get his mother to come in for counseling, to arrange services, to arrange evaluations, and she would just blow off the school. So from youth, really having no opportunity to have his needs addressed. And so the second judge, a Black man who grew up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, said to my client, "Your life matters to me. Your life has value to me." And he resentenced him to the minimum, 7 years, which at that point, after pretrial incarceration and appeal time, he was getting out within, I think, 6 months at that point. And so when I think of my career as a public defender and saying I need to be in that decision-making role, that decision-making process as a judge, I ran my campaign shortly thereafter because we have to have people on the bench who see value in the people's lives and that come from our communities. And for me, the transition from attorney and advocate to judge is one that I see not only to affect the people who appear in front of me, but also to be counsel and advisor to other judges that sit in my courthouse and provide my life experience, my professional experience, because frankly, most judges don't come from a public defender background. Most don't come even from criminal backgrounds that actually sit in the criminal courts. And so when you think of who's deciding these cases, who's reviewing these cases, we need not necessarily diversity of skin color, right, but diversity of professional experience, life experience. And so that has been part of my mission to say we need to expand what the judiciary looks like in the state of New York and beyond. I was told I only have about 5 minutes, so I think that as a criminal court judge, most of my work now is the arraignment on felony cases and matters, so I'm not sentencing at high numbers at this point in my career. But I think what we need to do at all levels of the judiciary is make sure that there are opportunities for education, rehabilitation, addressing the mental health needs that people have when they enter the criminal legal system so that they can take ownership and autonomy so that when it's time to make an application, hopefully under the Second Look Act, they are presenting their best selves, because we know it is not their worst incident in their life that they should be judged by, but the transformation that can happen when needs are addressed. And so I'm very hopeful. I'm proud to be here and to hear from the speakers that will come after me, the panelists that will talk tonight. But I thank you for having me here, and I hope you know that we are working within the judiciary to make sure everyone has a fair shot at justice. Thank you.